Am I live? Okay, hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter. I teach you how to start flipping and wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing how to grow your business. So the question is, how I'm sorry, I think I cut off. Well, welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I'm Michael Pinter. I teach you how to start flipping and wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing how to grow your business. Now the question is, do you pay closing costs for sale by owner? Now, the answer really is usually yes, but the truth is in New York, closing costs are incredibly high, and the seller's closing costs are much smaller than the buyer's closing costs. Now, that's significantly larger than closing costs in other states. In other states, the closing cost can be a few $100s. In New York, you're not getting out of most sales um, less than a few $1,000s. So the biggest component of a seller's closing cost is the realtor commission. Now, if you are going FISBO or for sale by owner, you're not going to pay the realty commission because there's no realtor, but you still are going to pay an attorney's fee, which will be anywhere between $1,500 and $3,500. You're still going to pay transfer tax, which is $4 per thousand. So if you're selling a house for, let's say, $500,000, it's going to be $2,000. And you might have some other title charges and others to record the deed. It could be $800. There will be some closing costs. Now, you could negotiate that with the buyer and say, you pay all my closing costs. You could. The buyer could agree or disagree. Buyer's attorney may say, no chance, we're not paying for those things because they're not customarily covered by the buyer. But everything is negotiable. Now, the costs on the buyer are obviously much more, right? This really was a clear question because you could buy a house for sale by owner. You're going to pay all the closing costs that you would pay if you were buying it from someone who was listed. It's irrelevant whether it's for sale by owner. So the biggest component of your closing costs are going to be title charges. You're going to have title fees that are going to be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. You're going to have to pay any taxes that are due within 90 days. They're going to make you pay. You're also going to have a legal fee of between $1,500 and $3,000. And you're going to, title charges can be even more. If you're recording a mortgage, if you have a mortgage, you're going to have mortgage tax, which outside of the 5 boroughs is around 1%. Taking a mortgage of $400,000, it's going to be $4,000. Inside the 5 boroughs, it's 2%. Taking a mortgage of $400,000, it's going to be $8,000. And you're going to have to pay the title company recording charges to record all those documents. So closing costs in New York are absurd. When I buy a property, I figure, and I'm usually buying it without a realtor, I figure around $10,000 in closing costs just to be safe. And when I sell, because I usually have to pay a buyer's agent 2%, so I usually figure $15,000 to sell. So really, when I buy a property, I'm out $25,000 that minute just for closing costs on the buy and the eventual sell. Plus all my additional holding costs, if I'm borrowing money, interest costs. It's very common for me to buy a property, sell it right away, and have to pay $50,000 in expenses. So if you're selling something for sale by owner, the closing costs aren't the issue. Now, I know in other parts of the country, the seller closing costs are a big deal, which is comical to me because very often it's under $1,000. In New York, it's so much more. But it's very often the seller's closing costs are negotiated to be paid for by the buyer. In New York, it's very uncommon, very uncommon. And it's funny because the costs are so much. I'm sorry. So you're still going to have the basic, all the closing costs. The only costs you're not going to have are the realtor commission. Now, realtor commission can be significant, right? If you're selling a property with a realtor in New York, it's not uncommon for you to pay 5%. If you're selling a house for $500,000, it's $25,000. And just to explain how the realty commissions work, you list with an agent, that agent is going to negotiate a percentage with you, right? 6%, 5%, maybe go down to 4%. And the way it works is that when a buyer comes and a buyer has his own agent, that the buyer's agent is usually going to split that with the realty commission. You're not going to have to pay any more than what you agreed to pay. If you agreed to pay 5%, you're only going to pay 5%. The buyer's agent is going to take half of that, which to me it's a funny situation when a listing agent is really willing to accept half of that and then doesn't take any reduction when there's no buyer's agent. Sometimes somebody will just come into an open house without a buyer's agent. So just as a shameless plug for myself, because I list properties too, I never charge more than 3.5%. And if there's no buyer's agent, I'll charge as little as 2.5%, sometimes even less. So I believe that if I lucked out, and it's not a skill set, although sometimes I do have a list of buyers looking in an area, and I could go to that list and sell it to them. But most of the time, it's just luck that the buyer ends up not having its own realtor. The buyer does not have his or her own realtor, that that the listing agent won't reduce their commission, and it's not done very often. So I think it's funny. I always do. I think it's ridiculous. I'm willing to take X, and I'll take significantly less from you if I don't have to pay a chunk of it out. Now, so what are the advantages of selling for sale by owner? So in my personal opinion, there are really three options to sell your house, right? The most typical, about 90%, is you're going to list it with an agent to sell. The less typical, in about 10% of the time, is selling it directly to an investor who is going to close an investor buy. Now, an investor buy is usually going to get you less money, but there are advantages to it, right? They're going to close on your timeline. You're not going to have to be on a buyer's timeline. The price that they give you is the price. It shouldn't change. No inspector is going to come and say, oh, I need to reduce the price by $20,000, which has happened to me. The appraiser's not going to come and say, oh, you have to put railings on and you have to put smoke detectors in. That happens all the time, where you're going to have to do some work to fix it up. You're going to have to clean it, broom clean, usually. And these are the things where if you sell to an investor, you don't have to do. And you're going to give up some of the proceeds because of that, right? It's pretty simple. It's a straightforward exchange, right? Just like going to Starbucks, right? You're paying $7 for a cup of coffee that costs 15 cents or 20 cents in actual materials. And you're doing that for the certainty and convenience that Starbucks provide. And the same thing when you sell to an investor, you're doing that for the certainty and convenience that an investor provides. The other option is to list it by yourself. Now, I think it's a horrible idea, and I'll tell you why. And people tell me all the time, I sell this myself. You'll never know whether you got the most money for it, right? So right now we're in a crazy market, and people tell me I sold my house for sale by owner, and I got $600,000 for it. And I think I saw that. So what happens is sometimes they'll call me, I'm an investor and a realtor, and they'll say, I have the house listed on Zillow. Why don't you come look? And I go, okay, why are you selling this for sale by owner? And they'll say something like, well, I've always sold the house by myself, or I don't want a million people coming in here because of COVID, something like that, which is legitimate concerns. Either of them are. And I'll say to them, what's your escrow? 600. And I'll go, listen, it's fine, but you'll never know if you got the most money for it, right? If you list it with an agent, I said, there are inconveniences. I said, but I think you'll probably get a lot more money, and then you'll know you got the most money for it, right? Whatever that is, right? You might be right with a number, but you'll never know, ever. And I've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of situations where somebody sold their house for sale by owner, had a number in mind. For whatever reason, they came up with a number. Maybe somebody told them that's a number. Maybe they did some research on Zillow, which is not accurate. And they sold it for that number and thought they did great. And I know that they left $50,000 to $100,000 on the table by doing it that way. So, and I'm talking about after the realty commission. So I think it's a bad way to sell, personally. I think it's a terrible way to sell. Again, I honestly believe if you don't have a time constraint and your house is in really good condition, you should sell with an agent. That's going to squeeze the most money out of it, and you'll know you got every dollar you were entitled to. And if there's some problem, if there's a time issue, or there's a problem with the condition of the house, or some kind of repairs that you don't want to make, then I understand selling it to an investor. I don't understand selling it for sale by owner with a sign or putting it on Zillow. I think it's a foolish way to go about doing business. I really do. I think you are putting yourself in a situation where you don't really know what that property's worth. I can tell you that every single property I've listed recently has sold above asking. Some of them significantly above asking. I'm talking about sometimes $75,000 to $100,000 above asking. So the idea that you would have put it out there for price X and you would have got price X and been happy can, in today's market, and a lot of markets will usually mean you don't know whether you squeeze the most dollars out of it. If you're happy with that, it's fine. I just think of the three methods to sell a property, it is the most foolish, because once you list it for yourself, you might as well list it with an agent. And the idea that I don't want to pay an agent and I'm going to lose that money on the agent, I think by allowing the most people to see it, especially in today's market, will allow you to maximize on your dollars. Now, in the event, and you always have the option, even when you list it with an agent, of saying no. So if your number is 600 and the agent comes and gives you a buyer for 600, but you're going to pay that agent 5% and you don't want to sell 575, you could say no. Raise the asking price. You can say no, I need 625 because I want a net 600. That's fine. I understand that. But but don't think just because you put it out there that you made the most money with it. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in the ways I can help you, figure out if you are want to wholesale or flip houses in New York, you should go to my site called howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in the course I give that teaches how to do what I do, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you are interested in one-on-one coaching, go to coach. And you want information about it, and you get a lot of information on my website. Go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Whatever media channel you're watching this on, please click like. The thumbs up really helps me. And please keep the comments coming. Comments help me. I go live 5 times a week. Sometimes I just have a brain blank as to what to say, so the comments help me by giving me topics. There's no bad comments. If it's a simple answer, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's a topic I've covered recently or covered in depth, I will send you links to the videos. And if it's something I haven't covered in a while, something I haven't covered at all, I'll do a video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching.